I feel like a lot of people, especially that I've met on various TMJ groups, like Facebook groups and subreddits, if they've been in this TMJ world for a while, you see this mindset among some folks where it's like, okay, the dentist that is going to have the answer to all my problems and fix me is right around the next corner. So they're always like comparing notes on dentists, and they've been to many and traveled around even and have reasons for why certain things didn't work. And they think that it's just a matter of finding the right dentist. And my experience is that that doesn't really work. And I did that. I did that several times during this whole game. And the first time was in 2014 in Vietnam. I was traveling all over the city. Anyone that like claimed to know anything about TMJ, I was going to them and trying different dental splints. Then I started traveling and I went to the US and I went to Singapore looking for dentists. And then later, when I was living in other countries like the US and Russia, I was, visiting dentists, getting their point of view. And it's like this for the right dentist who has all your answers, right? My experience is dentists in this stuff don't fully get it. And, most of them have been taught the wrong thing. So they have the wrong ideas planted in their head ever since the time they were in dental school. And it's very hard for them to kind of just throw that all away and adopt some new way of thinking. The other thing I notice about these patients that have been in this TMJ realm for a few years is that they accumulate a lot of what I call false knowledge, right? So they read posts by dentists on the groups. They read posts from other patients, and everything is like conflicting one another a lot of times. So this is extremely confusing. You don't know who to believe, right? And yet what you'll see when someone's been on these forums for a few years, and I've argued with a fair number of them over the years, is that they're actually like they're adamant, like they believe that they become experts because they're following these forums and they've read all these posts and stuff. And like I just call that completely false knowledge. Like you haven't learned the truth, right? Like you've digested a lot of information with some small percentage of it perhaps being correct, but you've also digested a ton of false information, right? And that's almost like worse. Like I'd rather help a person that is completely new to this and hasn't read anything than the person that's been on, TMJ forums for like 5 or 10 years. So watch out for these expert patients who, they're very proactive on these TMJ groups and they claim to know everything and they have a very strong opinion that they comment, and like they're spending probably like an hour or two on these groups every day just commenting on lots of things. And I've, back in the day, like I stopped wasting my time on those groups for the most part, for the last 5 years or so, I think in 2018. But before that, I was quite active. And I used to run across a number of these folks, and they would almost act like gatekeepers. Like they would kind of like decide, sometimes they're admins of these groups and they decide whose posts gets to go up. And they're kind of like deciding who's correct and who's not correct by whose posts they allow and what comments they make. And I met a lot of these people that like I consider most of them completely useless. I think they're doing complete disservice to people by doing that moderation that they're doing. And I like, my favorite question is like, well, how are you doing? Like, you've been in this TMJ group for 10 years and like their story consistently is that they're completely fucked. Right? Like you're listening to this person who's like 10 years going in circles and is deciding for everybody else what to do. And I'm like, well, I figured it out. Like I'm living my life. I'm enjoying my life. I don't have any issues. Like why are you correct and I'm not? Right? So I gave up. I gave up on these people. But my version or my view on the truth is, how do you get to the truth, right? Like you can almost say like, I'm the expert patient too, right? Like I have a strong opinion, but at least like I can show that I'm out of my own issues and I've helped a lot of people get out of theirs. So that's one good thing. But how else? Like, how do you get to the truth? And then you shouldn't just have to believe me. So that's where I say like, this game is a game where it actually is good to test things on yourself, because like the damage you do, as long as you don't do it for a long time, is not too significant, and it's usually reversible. As soon as like, as long as you understand kind of the basics, which is not usually the case in the medical industry. Like if you get some serious illness, like you don't just start testing things on yourself. So this goes against the grain, right? Like if I broke my leg, like I wouldn't just start testing, like how do I fix my leg? I'd go to the hospital, I find a doctor that does that for a living, and I just pay him to do it, right? Here, it goes against that grain. So what's different? What's different is that these dentists have been taught the wrong thing. And like all these patients that you meet are going in circles, right? Like, whereas when you go to get your leg fixed, you can talk to other people that they got their, broke their legs and got it set and they're fine. right? Whereas like you talk to 100 people that have been to TMJ dentists, like you're gonna find 99 of them are like pretty screwed up still. That is why I think like you need to almost rely on yourself much more than you should have to because of this. Start figuring out what the truth is. And this is, this is how I figured out my version of the truth. Like if I relied on the dentists that I've seen, and I've seen many, especially early on, I would still be completely screwed today. Luckily, like I said, okay, screw them. I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I just started testing things, and I was using logic. And I had access to, some great people like Marcello. I cannot give enough credit to Marcello. I think he's a brilliant guy. Figured out some very important components. I was very lucky to have exposure to him during my journey. But I also, used my logic and figured out a lot of things on my own. And me and Marcello don't completely agree on everything. How did I do that? I used that. I used logic. Like I tested something. I took the concept of something like curvature speed, and I thought, okay, like how do I track this on a splint? And then how do I test different things to see their impact on curvature speed? Like this is all logic, like I was a startup guy for many years before that. And I just took what I had as a process in the startup world where you're kind of like, is that worth planning and talking about something for a long time? It's much easier to say, okay, what's the simplest test that I can come up with to test this hypothesis, and just test it and learn, right? And so that's what I took to this realm. And that's, some of that is what I encourage you to do, right? Don't just believe me, test and say, okay, like this guy, he has some crazy ideas. Let me take what he said, like do a small test and see like, what do I learn? Now, I'm saying this, and like I know from past experience, like the majority of people are gonna hear that, they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna go to like some expert and believe them, right? Because that's kind of like their mindset. Some folks are just going to do that, and then they want to just find someone to fix the problem, or they want to find a dentist that they can trust, to believe in, and their outcomes are going to be based a lot on luck. Like, did they end up finding the right people? And some people are going to come across this stuff, and the only thing I encourage is like, give it a try. Like use your logic and see how it goes for you. And we try to be very transparent on our community. Share your experiences, read from other experiences, and decide for yourself. Like, is this something that you think can work for you? Thanks.